welcome to the very latest edition of the Premier View Tipperary GAA podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Premier View podcast. Today I'm joined by Stephen Cronin, Colin Purcell and Noel Dundon, a couple more on the way. And we're going to kick off talking about a massive weekend of hurling action with a classic All-Ireland final. Clare just getting the better of Cork after what was really an epic. Colin, I suppose you were the first person I went to when we discussed Tipp's chances in the county series earlier on. Tip are long gone, but you know that final on Sunday had the whole country talking about hurling on Monday. It really was a classic. Yeah, it was, Kevin. And looking on social media as well, it seemed to have plenty more outside the country talking about it as well. And you know, it was I suppose a great end to a better than the last few years championship. I'll take what Cork and Clare served up on Sunday any day before you take the sort of sterile stuff that we've seen from Limerick and in other finals, particularly the last two or three finals, which have been all, to my mind anyway, pretty unmemorable. So, you know, no doubt about it, it was a memorable game, and congratulations to Clare. I think they were the better team overall on the day and probably deserved their victory. Now, it wasn't without its usual share of controversies, not least with our old friend in Tip, Johnny Murphy, taking centre stage, particularly towards the end. And, you know, I can understand why Cork could feel quite aggrieved by a couple of the decisions that went against them. But overall, I think, look, the better team probably won. Clare were that little bit more composed, just always found a way. Cork went to 7 points in front at one stage in the first half, but couldn't sustain it, couldn't kick on. And really, it was a little bit of sort of foolishness from Clare, particularly at the end of normal time, that saw them having to go to extra time. And, you know, I think, you know, Aaron Shanahan was probably in the running for the worst substitution of all time there, you know, towards the end of the game, because God love him, everything he did just turned to absolute shit, like, you know, and it was sort of funny in a perverse sort of way to look at it. But look, I suppose, you know, like the winners, as we always know, write history. And, you know, I've seen lots of people kind of having a go at Cork this week, and you know, and the lads know that I've sort of been tipping up Cork for a while. I thought they would win on Sunday, and just maybe my own thoughts on Cork are that they pretty much, like, they did more right than they did wrong. Like, you know, they were a puck of a ball away from winning it in normal time and in extra time, and you know, they did an awful lot more right than they did wrong, as I've said. But you know, the teams were level, I think, 15 times during the game. So that shows there wasn't a whole lot in it. But overall, I think, look, Clare just about deserved to win the game. You know, Tony Kelly in extra time particularly stood up and showed us, you know, why he's long been lauded as sort of one of the modern day superstars of hurling. And he got 1-2 there in a blistering spell that was, you know, fantastic to watch. So as I said, look, a great way to end the year. If you're to look back on the year, was it a vintage year? I'd say no, it wasn't. I'd say there was plenty of poor games, plenty of games even that Tip were involved in that were way too one-sided, you know. But, you know, worthy winners, Clare, and good luck to them. And just to finish as well, like, they won the league as well, Kevin, you know. And, like, again, this is the old thing about, you know, the league doesn't matter, the league is this or the league is that. Like, it hasn't done Clare any harm this year, has it, winning the league and taking the league serious and handing us our arses in Port that evening. And that was the evening, I think, that myself and yourself and a few others really started to lose maybe our mojo around Tip this year, that we were so poor that day. And Clare, you know, really gave a performance in the league final, took it into the championship, and you know, good luck to them. Yeah, ironically, I think Clare were nearly as bad that day, but they just got it together that bit more. Stephen, I suppose I'll come to you with the Colin, a few good points there about the season maybe not being vintage. I'd really agree with that it was more games that weren't memorable, maybe that were the two semi-finals, and the final probably saved it in terms of the public consciousness. But Stephen, one of the, I suppose, the key failings from like a Cork, they seem to persist with that kind of long ball strategy from the puckouts, particularly in the first half when, you know, Clare were getting more and more on top. I think Sean Flynn had a couple of stats up there that, you know, Clare mined, I think it was 4 points in the first half off the Cork puckouts. I might be wrong on the algebra there, but, you know, they certainly did well off them there. But, you know, other than that, a game of fine margins there.
Yeah, I'd agree. The baffling part of that is a team who've done so much work in tactics and organisation and decoy running and all that. Like they persisted with a tactic that just wasn't working. Now, against Limerick, it was a breath of fresh air. It was brilliant, but it wasn't working. And at that level, you have to be able to do something different. And they had no plan B. Like for the last few years, we'd associate Cork with short passing, moving off the shoulder, free running, no contact. But this year it's been their Achilles heel. Like, it allowed Limerick back into the games, trying to work the ball out from goal, and they were able to overturn them a couple of times. But when they went long, they exposed, for me, they exposed Declan Hannon, and they got a lot of value from it. But when it wasn't working with against Clare, and it wasn't spread out over the course of a game where you only see it. It was obvious in the first half. There was no plan B. There was no something different. And I'm I'm a huge believer in tradition in hurling, and I think it carries significant weight in big games, but also the weight of expectation and the weight of tradition. I think the weight of history got to Cork, I feel, on the day. I know there's only a puck of a ball in the difference of it, but there was they did not seem like so many of them didn't hurl. Like, I like they didn't hurl to their max. They weren't free from pressure for an All Ireland final where they should have been. Like Clare settled down after a slow 10 minutes, and those boys hurled with abandon. You know, I felt Cork were a little bit leggy. They made the wrong decisions at crucial times. They were bearing down on goal, and it felt like they wanted to do a bit of Limerick, tap an easy ball over the bar rather than manufacture maybe a hard goal, but something that was on the Kilkenny teams of old, the Tipperary teams from 2009 onwards. They would have fashioned two or three goals there that Cork had an opportunity to do, and they didn't take it. And I just think that the weight of the famine that's how many years now in the making?
19 going on 20, isn't it, for Cork?
19 goal, like
20 next year.
this is Cork, like, they're hitting 20 years without an All Ireland win, and I think that the weight of history took its toll. It's probably, I'm nitpicking here now, but the last free at the end, and I'm not even on about the jersey tug because at the time nobody even seen it. But when the goalkeeper come out to take the free on his own 50, that's a Hail Mary free. There was three Cork fellas walked away from him towards the centre of the field, and there wasn't a clear man in the centre of the field for 50 yards. They were all have to go back to defend. Now, if that was 3 games ago, one of them Cork men would have tucked that ball around the middle of the field, travelled into the 50, tapped it over the bar. But none of them wanted it. I know it's the end of the game, it's the end of extra time, bodies are tired, but Cork lacked leaders for a long periods of that game the other day. And I think, I know I'm talking about Cork now, and I really should be giving Clare their dues, but I think the weight of history got to Cork. But Clare, in fairness to them, after a slow 15 minutes, I thought they were exceptional. They worked their socks off.
I think they fell over the line there.
But
Throw it in
they,
there.
they
And I
might have
don't
fell
mean to
over the
see that
line. They,
disrespectfully, but
they might have
they,
fell over the line, but they worked hard enough to fall over the line.
mm,
Cork didn't. After such a poor start, it would be easy for Clare to fold, but they kept working and work. And even I think it was David Fitzgerald, he might have had 5 or 6 wides. It didn't deter him from working and working and working and working. And when you strip it all back, and if things are not going your way, but you give 100% effort in your working, you get rewarded.
I don't know,
And
Stephen.
Clare were duly
Maybe
rewarded, I think.
Cork came back from 2 hammer blows at the goals as well.
They
Noel
did, but
maybe.
like, like added to a classic All Ireland final, there was mistakes. There was mistakes
Absolutely, yeah.
from everyone, referee and linesman, from everyone, and it
Umpires.
adds to the classic. Like, as I said, I don't think either team played a perfect game. There's and but it added to it, and I just think players' work rate far outweighs Cork's work rate, and that's why I think Cork, the weight of expectation got to Cork, because they had opportunities and chances that Clare made the most of, but Cork didn't.
Mm. And Noel, maybe just to bring you in there, ask for general reflections in a minute. But I suppose since post game, we heard maybe Horgan was carrying a little bit of an injury going in. Shane O'Donnell that came out, I think, was carrying a little bit of an injury going in. I think, Stephen, the way you summed it up there, it wasn't a perfect game, but like, it was a real enjoyable kind of leave everything on the pitch, leaving on the pitch there. Like, it was a much more honest game, I think, than previous All Ireland finals. I think that really added to the spectacle.
Yeah, I mean, it was a game of madness, really, wasn't it? There was so much mayhem throughout the field, and that's what the modern game has become like. It has become a kind of a dog eat dog type of game at a relentless pace, where fellas are crashing into each other and balls are flying left and right and bobbling out of hands because fellas being hit from tackles on both sides and all that kind of thing. It's just mayhem, particularly around the middle third, and that's what we saw on Sunday. But I think what we saw really was we saw it for probably a longer period of time than we would have in a lot of the other games. In the sense that maybe you'll get that at the start for 10 minutes or so, but it just seemed to go on and on. I would have been tipping Clare to win the game. On Saturday night, I was going into Mass and I met a Clare man and I said to him, I think you'll win it. And it was solely based on the sort of the notion that Clare had been coming for a couple of seasons, had been very, very close to Limerick a couple of times and were just not getting over the line. Whereas I felt that maybe Cork were a little bit new to it, a little bit fresh to it. This time, Clare managed to get over the line, and it doesn't matter a damn that was by a pint, that was a controversial one or anything like that. They got there, and that's the big thing. And I think that probably the one thing that Cork didn't have that Clare had was that little maybe bit of battle hardness that Clare would have had going back with all those battles over Limerick, where they lost out, barely losing out, getting caught in the final couple of minutes, and that this time they were determined not to get caught, even though they could have. I thought it was a tremendous final. I really did. I thought it was a really, really enjoyable final. And to be sitting there as a neutral watching it was great. The heart rate wasn't quite what it would have been if Tipper in it or whatever. But I thought it was a really, really good final. Probably saved the year, maybe, in the sense that, as you've been saying already, a lot of the matches maybe didn't get to the levels that we would have liked them to get to, and the final probably saved the year for drama and for the climax to it and all of that. But I would certainly feel that we should have been gone to a replay.
Look, we could spend as much time talking about whether it should have been a replay or not, and refereeing and umpire decisions and all sorts of things, extra time as well. But I suppose we just, like, there has to be a loser sometime, and the replay could have been Clare kind of turn up, win by 10 points, and you get the same result at the end of the day. I suppose, as we can't look, it's a Tipperary podcast or not, so we have to start referring it back to, I suppose, what does this mean, if it means anything for Tipperary? Once its loan has been there, 5 years kind of now, and probably, it's been incremental progress, slow progress maybe at times. And now I'd say, if you look over the skies in Shannon, if the clouds party might be ascending to heaven, given the welcome he's getting back in there. So, like, it's Pat Ryan as well was under wicked pressure, an acceptable first year, but no progress from Munster, and then obviously got through this year by a hair's breadth. So Liam Cahill and company are going into their third year now. I think the dust is settled, and we can say that with confidence. I think there has been a bit more the managerial merry-go-round, I think, this week, with Darren Gleeson leaving Antrim and that. But I think we can be fairly confident in saying that Liam and Co will be staying on now. So I suppose prospects in the championship, we were an absolute mile off Cork in May in what was a do or die game for both counties, and we were, I suppose, that made the Clare game a dead rubber for Tipperary, at least, or salvaging a bit of pride. And I suppose Clare showed up in second gear. So just, I suppose, a few thoughts on what that means for Tipperary, I suppose, if it does mean anything.
Yeah, well, look, Kevin, I suppose if you look at last year, first of all, like, we bet Clare down in Ennis, didn't we, in 2023? We scored 5-22 on them. And I think we drew with Cork, if I'm not mistaken, in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, and we scored.
After leading a good bit, yeah.
Yeah, we scored 225, I think, that evening. So, 15 months ago, we were as good as, if not better than, both teams yesterday. So what's happened in the intervening 12 months has had us all scratching our heads and wondering. But, the terrible saying of we are where we are, and where we were this year is miles off what we saw on Sunday. But not only was it miles off what we saw on Sunday, I think it was miles off from what we saw ever before Sunday. Any other game I saw this year, I winced looking at it because we just weren't at the races at all. And I keep referring to we suffered a record defeat to Cork. Like that can't be forgotten about. And the Clare game, I think I said on the podcast afterwards, was just sort of embarrassing to be involved in one sense. Like playing for pride. Like Jesus, like we're better than that. Like so. Look, there's a huge job on Liam Call's hands and on Michael Bevins. Like, it depends who you talk to. Were we overtrained? Were we undertrained? I don't know. I mean, I think, like, again, if we go back to what we've been saying, Stephen, yourself, Noel, myself, anyone who's come on the podcast has been saying we need to get a settled team. We need to know who our 1, 3, 6, 8, 9, 11, 14 is. We don't know who that is. We didn't know who it was. In the league, we didn't know who it was against the Limerick game. You can't be going into a championship with that sort of uncertainty. So there's one point. Second point is, what's our game plan, Kevin? I don't know. Do you know? Do any of the lads know? I've no idea what our game plan is. Absolutely no idea. Clare had a game plan on Sunday that they had several game plans. They could hit the ball long into Peter Duggan. They could hit it high into Peter Duggan. They could hit it long to Shane O'Donnell. They had their two wing backs attacking up and down the field, able to score points. They had Colm Noel in midfield, like working like a Colin Lynch reincarnation. So they had several game plans on the go. Cork, good, bad, or indifferent, have a game plan. So of Limerick, I don't know what our game plan is. So I think in that regards, we're off it as well. We didn't look fit this year. Our touch seems to be off. On the one hand, people will say to us, we've got lovely, skillful hurlers, but we don't have the physicality, we don't have the speed. But when I look back on our games this year, our lovely, skillful hurlers didn't have lovely, skillful touches or first touches. They couldn't get the ball up. They couldn't, they were missing easy chances. So, I mean, it's a very long-winded way of saying I think we're quite a bit off it. But at the same time, 15 months ago, we were as good as both of those teams pretty much. So what's happened in the intervening 15 months, I don't know. Can we get our mojo back? I really hope so, because I don't think we can, we can't afford to go through another season like we did this season. I mean, for the majority of it was just embarrassing. And I know the players will feel that, the management will feel that. I'm not here, this isn't having a go at them at all. I'm just, being realistic about it. It was embarrassing for a lot this year, and we need to improve big style next year. And we need to get, the buzz that was around Cork, you spoke about tradition and Stephen spoke about tradition. And it was one of the reasons why, in one sense, I was sort of hoping Cork would win, because, to see how energized their supporters had become and how they were very much connecting with the team. It was great to see in a way. It was really nice to see that tradition and all of that. We simply don't have that at the moment. Most Tipp people that I speak to are quite disengaged from the senior team at the moment. So there's a huge body of work to be done, huge body of work.
Yeah, I suppose, look, a week is a long time in politics, and no, Stephen, whoever wants to follow on from Colin's points there, 15 months ago we were as good, and as those teams are in the same ballpark at least. Can we come back 2025 now, refreshed, new ideas? Look, we're in a bear pit with the three best teams in the country next year. I'm sure Waterford will want to have a say for progression as well. But how close can we get next year?
Yeah, well, I think we probably showed flashes this year of what we can do. Our problem, though, has been the lack of consistency and the lack of staying power in games. That we can compete with teams and we can look like world beaters for 10 minutes and then we go asleep, and or maybe it's when the other teams turn the screw. And we always say to teams that we've been involved in like that, the measure of a team is not how well you play when you're playing well. It's how well you play when you're not playing well and when you're up against it. And it's how much resilience you can show when the other team is on top. Because if you can show enough resilience to hold them off and to stave off their rally, well, then that gives you a great platform to build, to go on and win games. And from what I've seen the last 18 months or thereabouts, I suppose, is that when other teams get on top, we simply have no way of stopping them. And suddenly the game is gone from us and it's over. And we end up in situations like we had with Cork this year, where it was so demoralising, and the Clare game then ends up being a dead rubber. But look, I don't think all is lost, being honest. I think when Colin Bonner came in as Tipperary manager, followed by Liam Cahill, they had a lot of restructuring to do with teams. A lot of marquee players departed the scene, and a lot of other players came to the end of their careers, or are nearing the end of their careers. And you can't rush players through. Um, I'm looking at the club championships at the moment, and a number of players who are really playing well now in the club championships, who have had 2 years of top quality S&C under them, under their belts with the tip. And I'm thinking in particular Sean Ryan of Templederry, who's playing particularly well with Templederry at the minute. And he's probably benefiting from that S&C. So it does take a while to bed in. Like, we're all looking at the divisional championship games, and we'll be looking at the county championship games next weekend too. And you would kind of ask the question, who else would you have on the panel that isn't there already? Do we have what we have? That's a rhetorical question, by the way. I'm not asking you to answer, but it's just, do we have the best players in the county on our senior panel at the minute, or is there somebody out there who should be in the panel who's not in the panel? And that's, I suppose, a question that we'll be asking over the next couple of weeks when we watch the county championship games. Yeah, it was a demoralising season from a tip point of view, and when you look at the pace of the All Ireland final last week, you would say we were a long way off that pace.
No, well, I'm just worried. I take that all that you say, but is it not a case like we did that whole trawl through the club championships last year after Liam Call's first year, and they said, there'll be changes, etc. And maybe it's maybe hard to find that diamond in the rough in like the slower pitches of September and October compared to the demands of intercounty. I just don't know. It's just, are we doing the same thing again now, or is it the case, as you said, we maybe focus on lads that are in the system and look at to get some more of those up quickly?
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. We did do a major scour of the county. Colin Bonner did it the year before with that
the Miller Shield, the much maligned Miller Shield, I suppose, in the end.
Yeah, and it didn't work, but I suppose he tried something and it didn't work. And as you say, Liam did the same thing last year. You can't, we're looking at our management teams, and they're at all the games, they're watching players and all the rest of it. I wonder though, are we watching the right type of player? We have a lot of very similar type players, and I just wonder, where's our Donny O'Connell? Where's our ball breaker in the forward line? Where's our Declan Ryan? I know they don't fall off the trees, lads, either, but like, you have to fashion them from somewhere too. Whereas we have 5 or 6 forwards who are very, very similar, very good ball players and all that, but we need a few ball breakers up there too, I think, And I just wonder, are we looking at the right type of player? We brought in that chap from Killerwan, Keane, the full forward, Keane. His second name evades me now. He was full forward when they won the
Darcy, is it?
Yeah.
Darcy?
Kelly.
Kelly.
Yeah. And I thought maybe he was the type of a guy that we need, a big, strong, physical man who would drive fellas out of the way. You go back through the years, we put Paul Shelley up into the full forward line from full back to try and add drive to our forward line. And I just think that we're lacking that little bit of drive in our attack. And that drive that you have in attack, that's where the ball is held up as well, to relieve your backs for a few minutes. Where if we're not retaining ball in the forward line, it's going to go back down on top of your backs, and it leaves them exposed. So I just wonder about what we are looking for, what kind of players we are.
Maybe as well, just to hark back to the final, and on that point is, you see Declan Dalton now didn't set the world alight on Sunday, but had a very solid championship. And he was a lad that was more kind of out than in over the last couple of years in terms of, so after a very solid kind of underage career, if you like. So, there is a chance maybe different players can prosper in different systems as well at different ages. So, like, as you said.
The other thing about that, Kevin, as well, like, we've had successful enough minor and under 20 teams in the last few years, and people will say, oh, you have to mind these lads, you can't put them through. But I think, if I'm not mistaken, and the lads might be able to correct me on this, like Cork, definitely Joyce played for Cork seniors when he was under 20. The 2 brothers at the back there,
the
Downies, I think they played. Barris definitely played. You're the fast lad in the forwards, Conley, he played as well.
I think there was 5 of them overall, Colm.
Was there? Yeah. So there you go, Kevin. Like, I mean, I just think like that's something else that we may need to look at. Like, because I take your point and Noel's point as well about maybe we already have done this deep dive in the county championship and they're just not there, and that the rest of the players are good, solid club players, but they're not, they're not inter-county standards. I personally, Noel, don't think Sean Ryan is going to be lighting up Croke Park. I mean, I can only go on what I've seen him with Tip. I just can't see it myself. And if that's what we're looking at, I'd be a little bit worried. But, I do think maybe the guys that have done it at minor and under 20, they need to come in now and step up. John Lahey started an All-Ireland final when he was 18, So if you're good enough, you're old enough, get them in and get them involved at this stage would be what I'm saying. So
sorry, sorry, go ahead, Noel, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying Brendan Maher and Paul Maher, they both came into it very young as well, and went all out very young, as did Noel McGrath and that. I suppose I reference Sean Ryan just from the point of view that I think he's benefiting now from the S&C that he has gotten for the last 2 years. That's on my point there, Colm.
Yeah, no, and I take the point, Noel. It's really well made, and it's a good point. I've no, and again, I've no axe to grind with Sean Ryan at all on this, and it's the club that are benefiting, so he's a very good club player now, but is he a very good inter-county forward? I don't know. But sorry, Stephen, you were going to come in anyway and make shit of all our arguments.
No, it is. I think I'm listening to your points about the players and all, and look, I hope we do find one or two little gems that mightn't necessarily fit the criteria of the silky smooth, the skillful player. He could be I'm going to make this a positive phrase, but he could be a big awkward donkey that can run up and down. Maybe we might have to start looking at one or two of them lads. But I think that there's bigger issues than finding a gem in Tipperary next year, because and I think them issues fall on management. Is we don't look like a prepared team. We go back to the point that you made last year. We drew with Cork down below. We beat Clare. Both teams got to an All-Ireland final this year, and then this year we were diabolical. Now we're probably the closest thing to mirroring a club team at inter-county stage, where a club team could be brilliant from one game to the next. They could be brilliant one year and they could be in relegation the following year. We seen it with Upper Church there a couple of years ago, and we're the closest thing at inter-county level to that. One of the big issues that struck me this year was we do not look fit. We as Noel touched on, we thought we could hit a 10-minute spell where we're as good as any team in Ireland, where we look, geez, this is old magic Tipperary, and then 10 minutes later we're 10 points down because we look wrecked. I have a huge doubt or lack of confidence in, are we prepared correctly going into every game? There's something missing somewhere. Is it the preparation from the management, or is it the makeup of the psyche of our players, where everything is done for them, but when they go out in the field and the hardship comes, they wilt? Like, two of our better players last year were Ronan Maher and Noel McGrath. Like, Noel McGrath is a genius, but to say that he is still your leader and you're one of your better players, I think is a bad. And I mean this in the most positive, in the most respectful way to Noel McGrath, because as I made it clear on this pod many times, Noel McGrath is my favourite hurler ever. I think he's one of the greatest ever. But Noel McGrath is 33 or 4 now, and he's still carrying the younger lads. I don't think that's good enough from the next crop of players. Now, whether that's in the psyche, in the mentality, where, and I've seen it in club teams, if your big player is not at the races, the rest of the teams fall down. The next crop of lads wilt, because they need to be looking at the leader for him to direct you. I'm not sure we have leaders in the lads that are 25, 26. We don't have ball winners up top. We can deliver the ball up top, and like a Shane O'Donnell, he's going to win it. You don't have confidence there in the lad to win it even with 2 yards of space, and then as
But I
we
suppose,
touch
look,
on game.
Shane O'Donnell, Stephen, I know I get your point as well. like Shane O'Donnell's probably a generational player. You know,
He is,
this,
but look, what I mean by Shane O'Donnell win a ball with 6 lads hanging out of him. We're not winning a ball with 2 yards of space. We're fumbling it. It's dropping out of our hand. There's not a person on the Tipperary panel in the forward side of the field that you can say, let's hit it up there. And he's going to break or even win 40%. You look at the minors down in Kilkenny. Who was the half forward? I can't think of his name now. Apologies to the young lad. But every time the ball was hit out to him, I genuinely believed he was going to win that ball in the air. The big left half forward, I think he was.
Ryan
Making,
from
he
Tipperary.
wasn't static under the ball. He wasn't getting caught up in the physical stuff. He was timing it. He was 6 foot something and he was still jumping off the ground. We don't see our lads jumping off the ground trying to catch a ball. But again, that's the psyche of the players. Is everything in the background done to get the best out of our players? I don't know, because we do not look like a fit hurling team. We can go for 30 minutes and after that we're spent. And I think that's far more important than maybe finding that one diamond, that one player in club hurling that could be there is not going to turn us into All-Ireland contenders, because I think the bigger picture I don't think is fully correct. What the phrase I'll use. There's something missing. There's something lacking. We're either overdoing it or we're underdoing it, or else the mentality is just not there. And we were blessed
and
with the
look,
likes of Brendan, Paddy, and all these lads before him.
that's for Liam, Cal and Cole now really to sit down and reflect on over the autumn, and that to kind of make sure that there's a good environment to go back into next November, next December. I suppose as we'll have to leave it there in terms of the county or the All Ireland. We managed to discuss the final without really focusing on Johnny Murphy, which is a achievement in itself. Did all right, maybe got a few big calls wrong, and I think there'll be a steady stream of Irish Examiner articles out over the next few days, probably blaming him more and more. But look, I suppose that's
one thing I might mention, Kevin, just before we go off the All Ireland final. I had a sort of a very enjoyable afternoon with the All Ireland final this year because I watched it on BBC Two, and just a shout out to their coverage. There was a lady from Galway presenting it. They had Seamus Flanagan, they had Neil McManus, and they had Paul Murphy from Kilkenny on it. And their coverage was excellent. Their commentator was really, really good. James O'Connor was the co-commentator. I don't remember the guy's name who was commentating on the game, but he was very, very good. So much better than that muck that RTE consistently serve up. I've been on it. It's a bugbear of mine, and you love to get me started on it. But I mean, like the RTE coverage again to me was awful on the bits and pieces I saw on Sunday.
I did watch on RTE column, but I think Flanagan in particular is interesting to listen to.
Yeah.
In terms of some of the maybe the tidbits that he gives you about
he's interesting to look at as well, Kevin. He's got quite the hipster look going on about him, but he was very, very good, very, very good to listen to. And they were really enthusiastic about the game. They weren't afraid to call some of the stuff out. Whereas, disappointingly again, RTE seemed to decide, well, hurling is a game that has no rules, and we're quite happy to go with that. And isn't the ref a great fella for quote unquote?
But I said maybe look, I didn't want to discuss it, but like, geez, did Johnny Murphy give an Johnny Murphy performance in the final, and is that why everyone was a little bit happy and surprised that it wasn't a free fest, maybe that it could have been, and didn't maybe like Jesus, maybe I think that Clare in the first couple of league games next year are going to get a rake of yellow cards for their backs for persistent fouling, and just maybe to kind of as a reflection on Sunday again, like look, you do it 100 times, they'd make the same decisions, but like there was a few things maybe that like normally you would see frees given for, or maybe stoppages a bit more made of.
Yeah, and look, I think it probably as Noel and Stephen have both said, it kind of it made the game the madness that it was, and it made it in one sense so enjoyable. But if you're strictly talking about the rules of the game and how
it's not the refs, that's not the refs' responsibility to have a good game, like, is it? Or like to make it a good game?
No, that's the point of making it. It's absolutely, it's not like, but that's the way hurling has gone now, and the majority of people seem quite happy with that. Throw the ball, do it, take. I mean, the steps rule. We were always taught 4 steps and you let it go, or 5 in a max. Now it's, you rarely see a goal in hurling now that's not over carrying, I think.
Yeah,
very
I think
rarely.
if you're getting challenged in that, you can seem to get away with 8 or 9 steps and kind of like a semi-foul, if you like, or a kind of a robust challenge. It seems to be a license, I think, now in the modern game to take a couple more steps at least.
Anyway,
So
look, I've gone way off where I want to go, but a shout out to BBC's coverage. It was excellent. I don't know, did Noel or well, Noel's probably after game, probably in premium level someplace, but for those of us at home, it was great.
Not right at Matty Morrissey for company, and yeah, just better watch the match anyway. Let's put it that way.
right, lads, I suppose, look, now it's time for the greatest show on turf. Is the Tipperary Senior, Premier Intermediate and Intermediate County Championships starting this weekend. The divisionals are over. I will say caveat, maybe in the last couple of years, the divisional form should come with a bit of a health warning, such has been the turnarounds, the miraculous turnarounds of what maybe a few lads returning from Ibiza or America can do, and injuries and all that sort of stuff. But look, I am a fan of the divisions, but the serious stuff definitely starts now. Stephen, it all kicks off Friday night in the intermediate, and Premier Intermediate actually takes center stage on Friday night, which I think is great. With a lot of games on. We probably don't have time to go down through kind of a game by game, but we'll just go down. We'll go down through, I think, championship by championship. We might start at the bottom rung, the middle rung, I suppose, with intermediate. Stephen, I'm not going to ask you for the Davins predictions there now. But like seems to be now a bit of a trend for me that the West is kind of doing a bit better maybe than in other recent years. I think Penalty, I expect them to be solid enough. Cashel will be up at the upper echelons, I think, of Premier Intermediate here. Oak seem to have got a second win since managerial change. And I think particularly intermediate, Kappa White and Golden, to mention a couple, will be at the business end.
Yeah, it is great, and look, just to keep the tip hat on for a second, not so much that I haven't just yet. Tipperary need a resurgent West. They need a strong representation from the West, and they all seem to be, really, really picking it up. This new system that's been implemented the last few years has everyone hurling at their level, and to move up the levels, you're consistently playing teams of your same caliber, and you're getting better. You're getting better, and everyone's getting better. And I know the West don't really have much of a senior championship anymore, but they're Clonulty are always going to be they're always going to be strong. As I said, tradition. But Cashel now really seem to be turning the screw here, and there'll be a lot of expectation for Cashel going into this year's championship. Erogan Carty now had a right good battle with them there last week, and they'll fancy their chances as well. After having a couple of tough years, so we're in for a really good championship, I think. Through the grades, and there'll be some teams looking to make amends maybe for the divisional performances, and other teams will be looking to build on their divisional
Yeah, that's
performances.
it.
So
And I suppose in intermediate as well, Stephen, Kilsheelan and I think in particular this year, Ballingarry will have a big say. And I'm
yeah, well,
tipping Ballingarry in this last 2 or 3 years anyway, since they're in it. So maybe it's third time lucky. Noel, you might have, I think Moneygall will have a big say as well. Probably start as favourites, Moneygall, but you know, it's that there's a few teams in this can be ruled out.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of the championship. As Stephen was saying there, that clubs are kind of at their own level now, and anything can happen. I think one you mentioned there earlier on, players coming back as well into the fold, having been away maybe for the summer. The championship is probably starting maybe a little bit early for them. A lot of those guys might be only coming back in kind of September, and it might be too late by the time if they're coming back to go
It's
back to
not too
college.
late for relegation if they're in it. So
Yeah, do you know what I mean? So that maybe mightn't be as big a factor this year, as it might have been in other years. But the great thing about the championships across all the grades is that, as Stephen said, clubs are playing at their own level, really, and that gives everybody a chance. And when you have a chance, you're always going to have fight. You mentioned Moneygall there, a very strong club, always a proud club with a lot of history and a lot of tradition there. Would have been playing in senior for many years in North Tipperary, and that. They could have a big say, a few decent players there, and the likes of Sean Kennelly, I suppose, is the standout player, having come into the tip panel this year. Very, very good club player as well, and that Ballingarry,
yeah, any team, I think at this level, I think Moneygall have 2 senior panelists, don't they?
Yeah.
Forget the other chap's name. But, like at intermediate, I know Kilsheehan would have a couple as well. But, like, yeah, in Portroe probably still missing that couple. I'm not sure if AJ Willis is still away and Mulrooney is it as well. So they probably were eyeing a very quick return up to Premier Intermediate rank. It'll be difficult enough for them, I think, as well.
Yeah, it's very, very difficult to get up, lads. That's the reality. It's very, very difficult to get promotion because everybody is fighting for it. And particularly if you've come down, bouncing back up. And look, people speak about Upper Church that they'll be back up in the Danbreen next year. They'll come. It doesn't happen like that. It's not as automatic as people might think. No matter what kind of a year you might have had the year before and whatever blips you might have had, it's very, very difficult to go back up. So whether it's Premier Intermediate, or Danbreen coming up and down, it's very hard to do it. There's a lot of hurling to be played, and a lot of things can go wrong. So a club or a team will need to be playing very well, and they'll need a lot of fortune to go with them as well if they are to be promoted. And I think that's brilliant. I think it really adds to the championships when you can have that kind of drama right across the grades. Predictability is the worst thing that you can have as a supporter.
Absolutely, and I think maybe that definitely at intermediate level. I think just to maybe wrap up with to mention Golden in particular as well, who are developing a very nice young team maybe as well. Might be, as they say, look, they got to the final last year. Might have been a year or two too soon, but they're definitely kind of going the right way and have a good crop of young players there. Stephen, who completes the Davins group there? You've Moneygall, which is a very tough one to start with on Saturday. Who else is that?
Moneygall, Knockavilla, and Upper Church. So we're starting with against Moneygall, and then you have Knockavilla and Upper Church then in the second
probably
in the other
chance
game.
For a bit of revenge against Knockavilla from 2023. Wasn't that a kind of a?
Well, we'll think about Knockavilla when the time comes, but we'll have to throw all our focus now into Moneygall, because look, Moneygall have been thereabouts now the last few years, and we really tried to drive it home. So we're going to be under massive pressure ourselves this weekend, and what we want to do is just go up and give a real good account of ourselves, and the rest of it will take care of itself then. You'd probably expect Moneygall and Knockavilla to be the favourites in their group, but look, ourselves in Upper Church, we're going to go up there and we're going to give it a rattle anyway,
Stephen, we'll just go on to the Premier Intermediate hurling championship as well. Look, I suppose, as I said, Mary's man, I'd be familiar enough with this one over the last couple of years. So look, again, it's great to see so many games here on Friday night because it gives it a bit of exposure. So just trying to get the fixtures up here. Aerogan and Carty, I saw them against Cashel in that kind of extra time West final. They left it all out on the field that day, so they look a bit rejuvenated. They play mine. Also, then we have Newport, probably after a couple of bad years as well. They play Thurles Sarsfields. Look, Thurles Sarsfields have probably been the most consistent team in this, got to a final last year as well. And then look, Killinall, who's, I was very impressed with them, albeit against a weak and St. Mary's side in the South semi-final. They play Burgess. Burgess are after winning their North Premier Intermediate, so as well, they have the preliminary quarter-final in their back pocket. I suppose, as Noel said a bit earlier, the shadow of Upper Church kind of looms over this championship large, because they were a team, I think, that had just one very bad year where nothing went right for them last year, and they got on a bit of a roll in the wrong way and they ended up down here. They will be looking at bouncing straight back up, but I think maybe you would have the teams like Cashel, Killinall, very who would fancy their chances, and of course Carrick Swan, who are coming off a great South final win and really look to be building a very nice team now. Callum Lanigan probably one of their leading the way there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think the danger for Upper Church, and they'll probably start the championship as favourites, because as you said, you get into a bad rush in a competitive championship and you could be easily relegated. As we see the year before, was it the year before or 2 years previous to it, they were in a county final, a county semi-final, and in both codes. So a little rush it's hard to get out, and it's hard to stop the ball. So But if complacency sets in there now, like, that could be a huge danger for Upper Church, because the likes of the Swan, Cashel, Aero, like, they're going to fancy their chances. Aero had their, when they first came down, everyone probably thought, they give it a good rattle, they might go up. They actually struggled. And, like, that's the beauty of it, that if you take your foot off the gas even a small bit, you might be a better team, but the lads around you are not too far away, and they'll turn you over if you're not on your game in the day. So I think the Premier Intermediate, especially, I think it's probably the most open, the most competitive of the three championships, and you could draw any one of 4 or 5 teams out of a hat, and you could put a few pound on them if you wanted, because they wouldn't be too far away from winning it. And I think there's 4 or 5 clubs that really genuinely believe that they're going to make the step up and win that championship this year.
Absolutely. Look, one of the I suppose biggest crackers from the open weekend is Gortnahoe. So a team that have been kind of thereabouts over this for the last couple of years against Cashel. Again, another team who have that preliminary quarter final. That's going to be a cracker in the rag on Saturday. All Burgess up in Templederry. Silver Mines Ballina. Again, I think that might be a repeat of a divisional game. Silver Mines might edge that for a point. And then newcomers Boherland, who are certainly no strangers to the grade. They play another very solid team, Clonakilty. Very difficult game to call, but like, lads, it's so important to get off with a win in the first round here. Like, it's
Yeah, it is. Get a good positive start to your campaign, and it sets you up for the year. Just as you mentioned, Gortnahoe, it's a big weekend for Dinny Ferncombe, who's the coach of Gortnahoe, and he's also the coach of the Galway Camogie team. So it's a big weekend for Dinny with all those big games coming on. But yeah, as you say, get a good start to your campaign, and you're putting yourself in the driving seat from the off. And the difficulty for any team going into these matches is that if you suffer a defeat and in the early rounds of a game that maybe you're targeting, and you're putting all your kind of your focus on at the start, you don't get all that much time to plan for the rest of the games. And obviously then if you have been defeated, it takes on a different hue. So winning your first game is a big one.
exactly. And like, my annual, for anyone that likes to flutter in this one, watch the draws, because there's always a couple of draws in that championship opening weekend. So we'll move on to the biggest of big shows now. Lads, is this a bit of a, like, I'm looking at it like, is there going to be a lot of singing and dancing here, and then Kildangan end up maybe not impressing too much and just rock on to a county semi-final, like, and just kind of maybe put the foot down again? I think that they tick a lot of the boxes there just to retain their championship.
Yeah, they look the strongest, and they're probably the most consistent over the last few years. So, they're going to be the team to beat. And, like, as I said, the Premier Intermediate for me is the most competitive. There's probably only a small few of the Danbreen teams that probably really believe I have a realistic chance of winning it. And you're probably, Timivara had a great year last year. Can they step up? Darren McCarthy is another year older. Could they go on better again this year? So you're going to have your Kildang, and Sarsfields will be in the mix, Lockmore will be in the mix, Timivara will be in the mix. But there's not going to be it's after that. Then there's not going to be too many standout
Yeah,
candidates to
Springer, like
actually.
a Kilruan maybe from 22, Stephen. Like, it's hard to judge.
Nina
But
could.
Kilran didn't really come out of nowhere. They were a good team for a couple of years leading into that, and they probably wouldn't have been the most fancy that started that year, and especially they lost Craig Morgan early in that season. But like, I know they were part of that awful tragic day with Clonty
Yeah.
Rossmore. Like, so it was a strange, I won't say a strange year, and I won't say an anomaly, but they haven't they haven't really impressed since. And so I can't see much from Killoran this year. So, as I said, outside maybe add Clonulty into the mix as well. 4 or 5 teams. There's
No,
probably
I
not
can't
going
be
to
having.
be.
No, I can't let you have Clonelty into the mix there now. I'm
Do you know
sorry.
what? Like
I just
Clonulty, I think they're
re-
always battling. They always give a right good account of themselves, and so
no safety net of a preliminary next year. I think
sorry.
that they've no safety net of a preliminary of a guaranteed preliminary through the division this year.
Yeah, true. Might make him better though. Could make him
Yeah,
better.
they'll have
You
to
know,
be. And no, you're tipping maybe Nina to come out of the pack.
Well, in terms of maybe a dark horse to come through, maybe Nina. I always think if Nina can get it together in a year, they can have a big say in a championship. But their big problem has been a lack of consistency. They'll put a good performance together, and the next one can be very poor. Now they start off this weekend against Holy Cross Ballycahill, and Nina will probably be fancy to win that game. But Holy Cross Ballycahill have been coming strong enough over the last couple of seasons.
Just about,
And
I'd say.
yeah, and the thing is, if Holy Cross turned them over in that game, it could well actually be the end of Nina's season already. Even though I'm tipping them to be possibly a dark horse, so it's a mindset thing. And Nina have Johnny Kelly with them, I think this year again, and Johnny has had a lot of success with Offaly, so he'll be coming into it on a bit of a high as well. But um, it's hard to look past Killadangan for the ultimate prize, but who knows? Who knows what will happen? There's a lot of hurling to be played.
Yeah, and
Um,
I think maybe, and again, look, I know I said maybe the divisions come with a bit of a health warning, but I was impressed enough with Mike Harkey for 40 minutes against Lockmore. And I think maybe they're in. He's like, how am I going to phrase this now? Not to upset a few lads in Mullinahone and Rossgray, but because they are in SARS group, but they are in a very qualifiable group, I suppose. It's Mike Harkey and Rossgray in the this weekend. SARS feels you'd fancy to beat Mullinahone. So I think that second place is well up for grabs there in that group. And I think that if Mike Harkey, they've been very competitive over the last couple of years, and they've another couple of young players coming. Stephen will have to Mullinahone maybe fail to deliver in divisions as is their want again. But look, they'll definitely be targeting, I suppose, a return to the preliminary quarters this year.
Yeah, and look, they had us egg in our face last year. I thought they'd struggle last year, but they went out and you know, they 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 put in a serious couple of games. And I suppose they could be missing a couple of lads for the first round, possibly the second round. So it'll be interesting to see how they go. Now, there's one thing you will get off Mullinahone. You get a constant fight. They'll battle all the way. The Swan beaten by a point in the South semi-final, and they're missing 5 or 6 lads, and they still put in a sterling performance. Of the lads that filled in for them, so they will battle. Speaking of Mullinahone, and I know we mentioned Nina. One of the big lessons Nina have to learn from last year is not to be getting caught up by players and off the ball and silly stuff. Because that really hurt Nina last year. Owen Kelly had him on strings, and all he was doing was going up to take a penalty. So like the little lessons that can be taken from last year's from the other teams. Like I know, like look, Killadangan are there. Everyone wants to beat them, but all the others have to find the lessons of last year and the improvements, and I think like as I said, to make them few steps, you have to have someone the likes of Mike Harkey, all these lads making inroads, and Holy Cross were part of a couple of humdingers last year. Like they if there's a I wouldn't they wouldn't be a dark horse to win a county now, but they could be a dark horse to join the maybe top four, and so you wouldn't rule them out. Ross Cray seemed to be struggling a little bit this year. The old bounce from getting up to senior the last couple of years, might not necessarily be the same, and they could be falling back into the pack, after such a good year last year. But like just on Mullinahone's, you know, I this is a big year for him now because I think there's a couple of lads still out in America playing hurling. So if they're not going to be there for the first round and it don't go the way in the first round, the second round becomes huge. Mullinahone don't want to get dragged into a relegation battle. They want to try and go out, do their business early, get their win, and it takes the pressure off a small bit. but they will give you honesty of effort. They've always given it. But
you're right. It's probably a free swing, even with the score difference the way it is this year. Like again, similar to last year. It's probably not going to matter really. What they do against Sarsfields. But lads, I'm just looking through the groups here, and you've Tumavara without a safety net, Barcelona without a safety net, Drummond Inch without a safety net, and Kilruan without a safety net. So you're going to have 2 of those going through, and 1 into relegation, and one going out through. That's a cracker of a group there.
Yeah.
That's what we want, really, isn't it? And every puck of the ball matters there.
Yeah, it's go for it. You have to go for it. You have to really go for it. You can't hold back. And that, as you said, that's what you want. You want your championship to be cutthroat. You want every game to mean something and to really mean something. And when you have groups like that, that's what you're going to get. Our board would have taken a lot of criticism for the tinkering that went on with the system over the last sort of maybe 10, 12 years or so. But I think it's pretty good at the minute. I think we have it pretty right at the minute, where all those games in the top division, for the Dan Breen Cup, they all mean something. They all really, really mean something. And I suppose we didn't mention yet the likes of Templederry and JK Brackens, Drummond Inch we just touched upon. But Brackens were in a county quarter final, wasn't it, 2 years ago?
Relegation last year, so that shows the swing.
Yeah, they've Shane Keegan in with them as manager this year. Looked pretty good in the mid semi-final. Then in the mid quarter final, I should say, against Holy Cross, very, very good forwards, fast forwards, but then faltered against McCarthy Burris in the semi-final, and just weren't able for the physicality of it. So I think Brackens will have a lot more to say about the championship as well this year. Maybe they fall into the same problem as Lockmore Castellani. They wouldn't see it as a problem really, but the fact that football is being played alongside it as well, and it does eat into the reserves of energy and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and Lockmore supposed to be another. We didn't, there'll be plenty of time to talk to with them, I suppose, as the championship goes on. But another time, maybe they might lack a bit of a punch off the bench in terms of Lockmore. But look, they're in a group there they probably should progress from. It says just to round out the groups, maybe it is Clonelty, Kildangan, Brackens and Templederry. Templederry have done okay since coming up as well, but they'll probably be another team targeting a progression at this stage. And look, we have to, I suppose, talk to in that Lockmore group. They play the County Intermediate Champions 2023 Lara. First up on, that's actually Friday night as well. Sorry, I didn't think that game was on Friday. And we have Nina, Holy Cross in that absolute cracker of a game that could well decide who else goes through in that group. Lara lads, I fear for them. I think that they will maybe be in relegation playoffs, and after that, who knows this year?
Yeah, you would imagine.
Sorry, go ahead, Noel. Go ahead. Don't go ahead.
I was going to say you would imagine that they will find it difficult to get to the pace of the championship, but they have quite a few young fellas on that team. So where there's youth, there's a lack of fear maybe. So they'll be hoping as well to try and get out of the traps if they can. Difficult game for them, Lockmore coming on the back of winning the mid title. Mid title has mean a lot to Lockmore Castellani. Divisional titles mean a lot to them. They put an awful lot of mass in them, and they put a lot of emphasis on winning games and getting into the winning habit. And they came late in all 3 mid championship games to win their games and to win the title. And I think they'll just have too much for Lara in the opening round. And then the next game, you're going to have the loser of Holy Cross and Nina. So that's going to be a crunch game as well.
Absolutely. And look, I suppose there's going to be a lot more tension. I think that you're going to see a lot of tight games, and definitely there's going to be a shock or two across the three kind of grades in terms of intermediate, primary, intermediate. And look, maybe one of the teams will kind of pinpoint something that we've said maybe at the start and Mark hanging up in the dressing room as usual and all the rest of it. But look, there will be shocks, there will be surprises, there will be teams underperforming and overperforming as well. So it's great to have it back. We can stay here for the night talking, but look, there'll be plenty more talk about maybe when we come to review the games next week, how right we were and how wrong we were. So with that, lads, I think we'll just enjoy the games at the weekend, and we'll get to as many as we can. So thanks a million.
Sorry, man.
No,